good, YouTube? It's Adam from I'm Music Mode. Welcome to a brand new video. Today we're going to go ahead and remake From Scratch TV Off by Kendrick Lamar featuring Lefty Gunplay. The tempo for this one is 100 beats per minute for the first track, and the second track is 101 beats per minute. And the track is produced by Mustard, Sounwave, Jack Antonoff, Sean Momberger, and Kamasi, Washington. So to kick things off, we're going to go ahead and bring in that first sample for beat number 1. So before we bring the sample into Logic, we're going to change our transport mode over to automatic mode. This way, when we bring in our sample, Logic will automatically detect the tempo of the sample we drag in, and then it'll make it really easy for us to cut up where we need to. So the first sample is Higgins, MacArthur Park. Logic will analyze it, do its thing, and give us a tempo map. Here it is right over here. Now I pre-listened to the sample, so I know exactly where we need to go to cut this up. We need 3 different samples. For the first one is at bar 62. So let's go over to bar 62. So that's the first part of the intro. So we're gonna go ahead and chop that up here. Oh, let's change over to a scissor tool. Chop that up. Chop that up, and then we're gonna go to bar 60 for our second bar. So we're gonna go over to bar 60 here, and this is our next sample. And then we're just gonna stitch those two together. So let's chop that up, and then for beat 1's main sample, we're gonna jump over to bar 65. Let's just take half a bar there. We'll just take that. We'll create a new track. So I'm just going to duplicate this, make sure flex mode is on this track over here. So we're just going to enable it here on this track. And we're going to take all 3 samples that we have and drag it down. Next, we're going to go ahead and change the tempo over here to the TV off tempo, at least the beat 1. So the way I like to work with it here is work with tempo sets. So for this tempo set, I'm going to actually rename it. So in case we want to go back to the sample, we can. I'm going to call this MA Park. So I know it's for this song right here. We're going to mute this track. We're going to go over to tempo and create a new set. We'll call this TV off, and this will be our TV off tempo set. And we'll change over the tempo to 100 beats per minute. And since we turned flex mode on those tracks, you can see that they are now still the same length and time, just will be played back at a different tempo. So all we got to do now is just bring all these back to the front. We'll do this and just work on our intro bit. So I think these get reversed. So it goes like this. Whoa, not what I want to do. Let's drag this over here. So this is our intro. The next thing we gotta do is pitch the sample up 4 semitones. So we're gonna select both of our regions, and we can go over to our region inspector over here and go transpose 4 semitones. All right, sounds good so far. Next thing we're gonna do is bring in an EQ and just shape it up like the one in the track. So we'll take out some of the low end here. And let's take out some of the top end. Even though it is a sample, kind of gives it more of a darker vibe. And then we're gonna go over and bring in some chorus. Actually, I can just use the shortcut here. We'll bring in chorus, Logic's chorus. This is the default setting that loads up. And in the original track, the volume was also lower as well. So let's go and just bring this down a bit. All right, so that is our intro sample. Next, let's get to that dun, dun, dun sample. That's this one right here. So the strings are playing a little bit too quickly there. So what I'm going to do is just stretch this out to a full bar. All right, and we're going to take that and we're going to drag it into a quick sampler optimized. And then what we're going to do is turn this over to slice mode, and we'll be able to slice up that sample. So I'm just going to change the sensitivity down a bit, and I'm going to take this one, I'll move it over, and let's move this one over to here. And we'll bring this one back here. So now if I bring up my keyboard, bring this back a bit. Maybe we should turn on zero crossing so we make sure we're not getting clicks. All right, the next thing we gotta do here is turn up our pitch to 4 semitones as well. Now let's go and put in that pattern. So we're gonna go ahead and just draw that in here, bring that down. So I wanna control the length of that sample with my MIDI. So I'm just gonna open up Logic's Quick Sampler and we're gonna turn it on gate mode here. This way I can control the length. So if I want it quick, I can. If I want it a little longer, I can. And that just happens every single bar. Now let's go ahead and put in some effects to make it sound like the original track. We're gonna open up Logic's EQ. And what we're gonna do here is just take a little bit of the lows out. I'm gonna pull that back a bit here. And we'll bring down some of the highs here. All right, that sounds good. And then we'll bring in some reverb. Let's just type in reverb and I'm gonna bring in Logic's Space Designer. And we're gonna use the default setting that loads up here. We'll just dial it in a little bit. Maybe we'll bring this down. All right, so there is our main sample. Next, let's bring in the drums. So I did drop a GNX deconstructed drum kit. So I'm just gonna go to that right here. Let's go to GNX deconstructed kit. We'll go organized by song and we'll go over to track number 7, TV off. I'm just gonna select all of the samples and bring it into a drum machine designer because we're gonna use them for the entire track anyways. So now let's go ahead and start off with clap number 1. So here's our first clap. Go to pattern. It's just gonna go on the 2 and 4s. So it's gonna sound like this. Maybe we can make that a little louder. Next, let's get to the hi-hats. So let's go ahead and duplicate this over 32 steps. The pattern does switch up here a little bit. Go ahead and bring that up in volume. All right, next, let's get to the 808. So once again, we need to control the length of that 808. So I'm gonna go over to the quick sampler here. And we're just gonna change this over to classic mode. This way, as long as I stretch out my MIDI note, that's how long the note will play back. And I'm just gonna stretch out the release a little bit so it's not gonna click and pop. So something like that is okay. Duplicate that over. And then this one is going to get stretched out. Let's duplicate that once again. And then over here we get a rule, so we're going to go something like this. All right, let's just make that 808 a little bit beefier. So I'm going to bring this up. And then we're going to go ahead and bring in a fat effects just to make this a little bit thicker. So we're going to cut this out, cut that out, cut that out, bring up the soft limiter. And we'll bring it back a little bit. Add some clipping to it. All right, so that sounds good. Next, let's copy this over and get to the perk. So for our next pattern, it's just gonna add in a perk. So this perk right over here, it happens right at the end. Let's change this over to 64 steps to equal the 4 bars. And there's just 2 hits that happen at the end. All All right, and then we're gonna copy all this over. We'll take out the perk and we'll take out the 808. And then we're gonna bring in that piano. For that piano, we're gonna create a new software instrument track. We're gonna go over to our library browser. We'll go over to piano and bring in the songwriter preset. Let's go and draw on that pattern. Just duplicate that over, open up another EQ. I'm just gonna take out some of the lows and some of the highs to make it a little bit more narrow sounding. And let's just push that back a bit. And then from that, goes into this. All right, so that brings us to the next beat, the beat switch up. So first thing we gotta do is change the tempo. So we're gonna take our transport bar, bring it over to here, or sorry, our playhead, go over to our tempo, create a new tempo. And what's gonna happen here is we're gonna type in 101. And let's just delete this one here. We don't need it. So now everything after bar, what are we at here? Bar 19, it's going to be 101 beats per minute for the new song or the new beat switch up. But first we got to bring in that sample and figure out what we need to do there. So what we're going to do here is drop down here and create a new tempo set. Let's create a new set. This way, when we bring in that new sample, the same thing as the first time, we'll find out that tempo and it'll make it really easy for us to chop it up. Before we bring in that sample, I'm just gonna mute everything so that the tempo will actually analyze. And the sample is Overture by, the Black Hole Overture by John Barry, the orchestral version. So if you're not getting that analyzed tempo map when you bring in a sample, it's probably because you have a track that's unmuted. For some reason, you have to mute the tracks for that new tempo set to come in. It's kind of a weird thing, but we work around it. So this is the sample right here. So once again, I know exactly where to go because I listened to this beforehand. So there is actually two samples that we need. So what we're going to do is let's go to the first one. So when it switches up from beat 1, that is at bar 30. So right over here. So just this. So we're going to chop that up. All right, and then when the drums come in, we're gonna go back to go forward to bar 50. So bar 50 is right here. So it's playing the same thing, it's just more instruments come into it. All right, and then we're gonna just create a new track and do the same thing that we did beforehand. So duplicate this track, bring down both of our samples onto its own track, turn on flex mode. Now we are set to go. Now we can go ahead and just rename this tempo set. Let's call this Overture. So that is our Overture sample. Tempo map, we'll go ahead and mute that up. And let's go ahead back to the TV off tempo map. And we can go ahead and just clean the session up a bit so it's not so messy. Let's hide this and let's hide this. All right, now it's a little bit cleaner. And we don't need this first track. Okay, so now I think this was the low one. So we're gonna go back to our bar over here and just bring that in. Let's unmute everything here. So right here, it doesn't just loop itself. There's actually a slight edit that happens. So for the second one, this part just repeats itself. So it goes done, done. All right, so that's done. Next thing we gotta do is just bring down the volume a bit because it is a little bit quieter in the track. We'll bring it down a couple dBs. And then of course, we're gonna bring in that chorus just to soften it up as they do for sample tracks in songs. So we'll go Control Command P and we'll bring in chorus. We'll use the default setting that loads up. All right, so that is our main sample. Next, let's go ahead and adjust the second sample. Here it is right here. Bring that back. Whoa, I don't want to go all the way back. We'll come into when the drums come into play. And we're gonna do the same thing here. It's not gonna loop itself. So we gotta do that dun dun part over here as well. Take that out. And we're just gonna bring this down in volume as well. Let's go a couple more because it's a little louder. There's more instruments. And now let's get to the drums. So we're gonna go over to our clap number 2 for the beat switch up. Whoa, I don't want that. Go create pattern. And I'm just gonna go on the 2s and 4s once again. Next, let's get to the hi-hat. We're gonna change this over to 32 steps. And the velocity over here is just gonna be pulled down a little bit. So it's gonna go from a louder down to a quieter one. Oh, I wanna bring that in, and this one here. All right, so that is the hi-hat. Next, let's bring in the open hat that happens on the 1s. And last but not least, the 808. Duplicate that over. Whoa, let's duplicate that over. Except this gets switched up here. All right, so here's the full 808 pattern. Last but not least, let's get to the bass. So we're gonna copy over this first section over here. Copy that over with the one with the less instruments. Let's just loop that up. Let's copy over all this, minus the 808. And let's bring in that bass pattern. It's gonna go something like this. And once again, for this bass, I just want to make sure that I am controlling the length of it. And this just happens every bar. That's pretty much all there is to it. The next thing we're gonna do is go to mix this, arrange it, and when we come back, we'll take a listen to the full merge we just put together, TV Off by Kendrick Lamar, featuring Lefty Gunplay. featuring Lefty Gunplay remade in Logic Pro. If you're Logic Pro users out there, I'm going to go ahead and save this entire session for you, place it as a downloadable link below this video. If you don't use Logic, I got your back as well. I'm going to export all the MIDI stems, audio stems, and of course include the drum kit that you heard in this remake. You can find that playback down below the like button as well. If you're doing a question list or just want to chat or have any suggestions for future videos, let's go chat down below. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one. Later. Peace.